Being unprepared is how great fathers become weekend visitors. I'm Jude Sandval, and this is Strategic Defense, the operational briefing for fathers who refuse to be sidelined by a system that exploits drift and unpreparedness. I ensure your mistakes don't become your permanent reality. While a lawyer handles your legal rights, I serve as your guide through the decision gap to protect your actual role as a father. You are now entering the command center. Today's briefing begins now. Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Gentlemen, look, I understand that if you're listening to this, you're probably looking for an ally. I know you're in the middle of the legal fight for your life, for your kids, for your future, and it feels like the weight of the world is on your chest. What I want to talk to you about today is the loneliness of all of that. I know that you want to believe that if you just hire the right person or explain your side to the right investigator, someone is going to step up and say, I see what's happening here. This isn't right, or let me help you out. But I'm going to tell you something right now that's probably going to hurt, but you need to hear it if you're going to win. In the courtroom and in this entire process, you do not have any friends. Let me say that again. And I know, but you've got to hear it. You do not have any friends in the courtroom or in this process. Not your lawyer, not the person from the state, not the expert witness. It's you against the machine. Today, I want to pull back the curtain on why that is. So I understand that that might feel lonely, but how the system is actually built and why you and only you have to be the one driving this bus. So let's jump in and let's get real about this. First thing is that the guy sitting next to you, your attorney, I know you're paying him a fortune, maybe probably, if it was like me, more than your first car cost. And I know that because of that, you feel like you've hired yourself a personal gladiator. You think he's going to go in there, burn the place down for you, but there's a fundamental conflict of interest that you need to understand, or you are going to get absolutely blindsided like I did, and like I hear so many guys in our community talking about when they show up. Your attorney is an officer of the court before they are your advocate. This and an officer of a court is not just some honorary title they put on a plaque. It's a legal and ethical hierarchy of loyalty. To the judge, a lawyer owes candor, diligence, and utmost respect. To the system, they owe the duty of keeping the wheels turning. So let's think about the geography or the of your case, or the lay of the land, if you will. You as a dad showing up are a visitor in that courthouse. Your attorney lives in that courthouse. They may see that judge every single week. They see the opposing counsel at the bar association meetings, at conferences, at holiday parties, maybe even lunch spots across from their office, or because all of their offices are nearby. So you, on the other hand, are one file in their file cabinet. Those other people, that's their lifelong professional network. If your lawyer is going to have to make a choice, and a difficult one, to protect your parenting time or staying in the good old boys club network, guess what that's going to be? It's going to be staying in the good old boys network so that their next 10 cases can go smoothly. So that is the number one thing that you need to understand about this process. Now, the other about this family court process is what I call the efficiency trap. You have to understand that the system isn't built for justice. You heard weeks ago when we talked to Doran about his book. He talked about the fact that he came to that realization pretty quickly after losing time with his kiddos. So the system isn't built for justice in the way we talk about it at the dinner table or the way that we watch it on TV. It's built for efficiency. Judges are managers of over capacity dockets. Their goal is not justice. Their goal is to clear the calendar and minimize state liability. This is why you'll see your lawyer and the other lawyer whispering in the hallway and then coming to you with a professional courtesy request. They'll say, hey, the other side needs a 60-day extension on the discovery, or let's just agree to this temporary schedule for now. Gentlemen, they call it civility, but in family court, temporary is the most dangerous word in the English language. When your lawyer agrees to a small, quote unquote, small compromise to keep the case moving, they're allowing a pattern to set in. Judges reward status quo. Judges and the court likes consistency. If a temporary order has you seeing your kids every other weekend for 6 months because your lawyer was being courteous with the schedule, the judge is going to look at that and say, well, the kids are adjusting to this now. Why change it? By being a nice guy in the name of courtroom efficiency, your lawyer just let a temporary mistake become your permanent reality. So what is the strategic pivot that you can make? This is why you cannot outsource your fatherhood to just a law firm. This is not to badmouth attorneys. They have structured this system to be the most efficient system for them. And your lawyer is a technical executor within the system. They are there to handle the filings, the legalese, and the procedural rules. But you, and only you, must be the primary strategist. You have to be the one that says, no, we aren't agreeing to that extension, or no, I'm not moving out of the house until we have a signed order that protects my time. If you expect your attorney to save you, you're abdicating your power to someone who has to look your opponent in the eye and then work with them again tomorrow. You are the only person in that room, in that courthouse, in that courtroom, who is truly fighting for your name, for your reputation, and most importantly, for your legacy. If you don't lead the strategy, this niche industry will process you right out of your kids' lives because it is much easier for their schedule. Okay, let's. I know that's a lot, guys, and you might have to take a minute and pause this and process some of this. But I can't tell you the number of guys that show up, and this was the same thing for me until I figured it out 3 or 4 attorneys down the road. Unfortunately, that it was that this is just the way that the system is structured and how it works. We often, so here's the next part of this, is that we often think that to be proven unfit in court, that the court needs a mountain of proof that we're bad guys before they're going to limit our time. This is a huge misconception. And if you want to find out about it and the truth, just show up to one of our calls, because we've got many guys that are experiencing this. The court assumes the standard, we assume that the standard is clear and convincing evidence. But the reality is that's a higher standard than is usually reserved. That is usually reserved for what would be a nuclear option of terminating parenting rights forever. So they are not going to use clear and convincing evidence unless they are terminating parenting rights forever. For almost every single other thing in court, your custody, your visitation, your schedule, the courts work on a much lower bar called a preponderance of evidence. Now, you heard Robert Garza talk about this in the work that he's doing a couple of months ago in trying to get some of this changed in courts. And so that is a complete different thing. So what does that mean? I call it the 51% rule. It's a balancing test. It means if the other side sways the judge just by a single percent more than you do, you lose. Even the weight of a feather can tip those scales, dads. When the bar is that low, not clear and convincing evidence, preponderance of evidence, when that bar is set and it's that low, the truth doesn't automatically win. You know what does win? The narrative. The narrative wins in family court. This is where those old school biases and stereotypes, like the tender years doctrine that assumes the mother is the only essential parent, start to fill in the gaps. If you aren't meticulously documenting your life, and if you aren't keeping a record of every doctor's visit, every school meeting, every stable moment, you're leaving that 1% up to a judge who might be having a bad day or who holds a jaundiced view of what a dad's role should be. You can't walk in there hoping the truth will eventually float to the top. In this 51% system, hope is exactly how you lose. You have to overwhelm that threshold. And unfortunately, as a dad, you have to overwhelm that threshold. Don't shoot for the 51%. You have to overwhelm it with a record of stability and presence so dense that it makes their default assumptions impossible to maintain. You have to be the lead investigator of your own case, because if you leave it to the system, they will choose efficiency over your bond every single time. You need to walk in with an evidentiary record so strong that it moves the needle beyond a coin flip and into the realm of deniable fact.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, dads, Jude here. I'm pausing this conversation for a mission critical warning. Everything we discuss on this podcast only works if you have a role to return to. Most fathers don't lose their kids in court. They lose ground quietly through drift and decisions made under pressure. Being unprepared is how great fathers become weekend visitors. I ensure your mistakes don't become your permanent reality. Stop the drift today at thedivorcedadvocate.com. Take the free weekend visitor risk assessment or book your fatherhood protection session. Your kids are counting on you. Now, back to the show.
Okay. The self-preservation loop. Realize, dads, the family court is a niche industry. It's small. It's a very closed loop of professionals who all rely on each other for their continued livelihood. I alluded to this in the beginning in section 1, but when you walk into that courtroom, again, you're a visitor. You're not just entering a house of justice. Okay. I mean, you get this. I understand most of us have not spent time in a courtroom. So this may be the first time you're ever walking in a courtroom or being involved with the justice system. Let me just tell you, you're not just entering a house of justice when you walk into family court. You're walking into a multi-billion-dollar cottage industry where every single actor in that room has a financial interest in the machine keeping its wheels turning. We're talking about judges, magistrates, child protective investigators, parental evaluators, integration therapists, all of them. They are a self-sustaining ecosystem. So if you want to think about how this works, let me give you an example. The judge appoints the evaluator. That evaluator, who is often charging $10,000 to $20,000 per case, and one of you or both of you is paying this on top of what you're paying attorney, this person then recommends a specific therapist. That therapist then writes the report that justifies more hearings, more motions, and more billable hours for attorneys. This industry thrives on conflict. And so, and that's not to say that it's designed that way. Most of the cases get resolved outside of court. But here's the thing, is the way that this has been structured is not the way most normal businesses are structured. So this whole system, this whole ecosystem, the court system, and by extension, each of the people that work within this niche industry, which is family courts, it's not the same as a normal business. In a normal business, you want to solve a problem quickly. In the niche industry of family law, a fit parent who resolves things quickly isn't nearly as profitable as a high conflict dispute that lasts 3 years, or that will get solved and then comes back. It doesn't get solved very well. There's a lot of stuff left out. You've got to go back to court. You've got to clarify things. So you've got to have a PCDM, or you got to have a motion to go back to the court, et cetera. It makes it much, much easier. And there is no accountability built in. So if somebody forgot this or didn't get it right, or the judge didn't rule the right way, there's no going back and saying, oh, sorry, let me fix that. Let me remedy that. Let me do that on my time or on my dime. That doesn't happen. It is incumbent upon you to have to go back and fix all those things. And that takes you either time or money or both in order to do that. And look, these professionals all have mortgages to pay. They have staffs to fund, reputations to build, and your ongoing legal struggle is the only revenue stream that keeps them in business. Okay, so this is the lay of the land, dads. None of these people are going to stick their necks out to challenge the system for your case. Again, you are one file in that file cabinet, whether it's the attorney's file cabinet or the judge's file cabinet or the therapist's file cabinet, any one of them. If a therapist or an evaluator realizes that a judge made a catastrophic mistake in an earlier order, they are often hesitant to say it clearly and decisively on the record. Why? Because they depend on that judge for their next appointment. They depend on those attorneys for their next referral. If they become known as the difficult expert who challenges the bench or the bar, their phone stops ringing. Their mortgages stop getting paid. That is just how it is. They are incentivized to maintain the status quo and prioritize the smooth operation of the courtroom over the individual truth of your relationship with your children. They will use unscientific theories or vague best interest standards, which is most states, which are completely undefined. And they will use these as a blank slate to justify whatever keeps the peace within their professional circles. So when you're in that room, stop, take a look around. You are the only person in that room whose life, whose name, and whose children are actually on the line. For everyone else, this is a professional transaction. Treat every quote-unquote expert as a person you need to manage, not an ally that you can trust. If you don't advocate for yourself and force them to look at your evidence, they will simply process you through the system in the way that is easiest for their schedule and their bottom line. All right, let's look at a couple of other people that you're likely to encounter, and that's these state agencies like Child Protection Services, CPS. It's called different things in different states, and law enforcement. Unfortunately, lots of times that becomes part of the process. This is where most dads lose their footing because they walk in with the complete wrong assumptions and the wrong mindset. Mothers and fathers often think CPS is some kind of elite, special ops, investigative force, and the court treats it like that. Oftentimes, in many of the states. The truth, you're going to love this. Most of these departments are about as efficient and as competent as the post office. I don't know how many of you still go to the post office. I don't. Actually, I had to for the first time in like years this week. Look, they are a massive, dysfunctional bureaucracy. The post office and these other state organizations buried under the weight of their own administrative rot. There's some data around this, and I'm going to pick on Texas, which you would think would have a much, much better reputation, if you will, for their ability to deal with some of this stuff. But they are notorious for high staff turnover in Texas CPS. Nearly half of all of their caseworkers quit within their first year on the job. And I'm using Texas. We've got lots of clients that I've had and do have currently lots of clients in Texas. So I've gotten to know that system, and unfortunately had to deal with clients and dealing with CPS. But so here's the thing: if half of their caseworkers quit within their first year, think about this. You are potentially putting your children's future in the hands of someone who's literally still learning where the break room is, who's overworked, undertrained, likely has a caseload of 40 or more families to investigate. These workers are not your friends. To address their turnover, these departments have even lowered their educational requirements just to fill the seat, to be able to hand files to somebody and say that they're doing something. You're dealing with the system that has been criticized for missing signs of danger in over half the homes that were previously reported. Look, dads, they aren't looking for the truth of your bond. They're looking for a checkbox to hit so they can move to the next file. And here's the danger for you. When you show up as a listen to this very, very carefully, because I get this all the time with dads that come to the community and find themselves just in a terrible, terrible situation. When you show up as a protective, frustrated, or angry father, they don't see a hurting dad. They see a problem. They will pathologize your frustration as emotional instability, or worse, aggression, because it's an easier narrative for them to document and close the case than to look into and investigate. Don't look for validation from a caseworker who's just trying to survive their own workday. The same reality applies to law enforcement. Stop thinking you can explain your way out of a dispute on the front porch or during a handoff. When the police show up, you need to understand one thing. They aren't there to settle a custody dispute or decide who the better parent is. They're there to stabilize the scene, clear the call, and identify a bad guy. They're there to identify a bad guy so that they can leave. They want to get that done. They want to get that call over with. They want to get the paperwork processed, and they want to get on to the next call in their queue or whatever else they need to be doing. Most dads fall into the good guy trap. You think if you're reasonable, if you're transparent and helpful, the officer will see you're the victim. In reality, the moment they arrive, they've likely already formed a conclusion based upon the initial 911 call. Every word you speak, every innocent explanation is a statement that can be twisted and used as evidence against you in a 51% preponderance of evidence system. If law enforcement shows up, dads, you have to realize that silence is a tactical necessity, not a sign of guilt. And let me say that again. If law enforcement shows up, you have to realize that silence is a tactical necessity, not a sign of guilt. You must be polite, you must be calm, but you must be firm in your rights. Use this exact script. Officer, I'm happy to cooperate with your presence, but I'm choosing to exercise my right to remain silent. I want to speak to my attorney, and I'm not going to answer any questions. Once you say that, then you actually have to shut the hell up and be silent. Don't try to clear things up. Don't try to make small talk. Anything you say after invoking your rights can be viewed as you waiving those rights. Let them do their job, but don't give them the rope to hang you. Your only job in that moment is to remain defensible and wait for your counsel. All right, guys, I know this is a lot, and it sounds lonely because it is lonely. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to give you BS platitudes, and I'm definitely just not going to tell you, hey, it's all going to work out in the end. It's heavy when you realize that every professional in that room is operating on a different set of incentives than you are. That is the thing that I want you to take away from this entire episode. Everybody in this system is operating on a different set of incentives than you are. But here's the secret. There is massive power in that loneliness. Once you stop looking for a savior, once you stop hoping that the judge will finally see the truth or that your lawyer will have a sudden epiphany and fight for your kids like they're his own, something will shift for you. You will stop waiting for permission to be the father your kids need. You move from a state of hope, which is a terrible strategy, to a non-negotiable operational end state. So let's talk about what the three pillars of your defense are. To win in this environment, you have to occupy these three roles that nobody else can fit, nobody else can be hired to do. The first is the primary investigator. You have to know the facts of your children's lives better than anyone else in the room. You're the one who knows the teacher's names, the doctor's appointments, the specific dates of every denied visit or manipulative text. If you leave the fact finding to the CPS worker or your attorney, the CPS worker who's managing 40 other families, your attorney who have 50 or 60 other cases, you've already lost. You also have to be the primary strategist. Your lawyer handles the legal filings. You handle the mission. That means you have to get straight and understand what your mission is before you're handling this mission. You're the one looking 6 months down the road during that decision gap, the time between the court dates where the patterns of your life are established. You decide if a compromise is a nice guy trap that will turn into a permanent legal reality. You also, and this is the third, have to be the calmest person in every single room. This is your most lethal weapon. In a high conflict system, that is constantly looking for volatility to justify its own intervention. Your restraint is your armor. When the other side is unhinged and you're the constant, stable rock who responds with facts, who responds with dignity, you are building a record that is impossible for a judge to ignore. So how do you build that inevitable outcome? Don't walk into the court waiting for justice to find you. Justice in family court is often just a path of least resistance for an overworked judge. Your goal is to build a case that is so airtight, so documented, and so dense with patterns of your stability that you make justice the only logical outcome for the court. You make it easier for them to leave you in your children's lives than to sideline you. This isn't about winning or winning a lawsuit. You're fighting for your name, for your reputation, and for your legacy with your kids. You're showing your kids what real male leadership looks like under pressure. And this starts with you deciding right now that you are the leader of this mission. So dads, stay sharp. Stay silent when it counts, not always, but when it counts. And remember, you're the only one in that courtroom who is truly fighting for your children's future. Gentlemen, thanks for listening today. If you found some value in this, I would sincerely appreciate if you could give us a star rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening. If you're watching, leave a star there. If you could leave a comment, that would be great too. One step further, share this on social media. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on X, we're on LinkedIn. We're everywhere now, and we're trying to proliferate this and grow this to get as many dads as possible the help that they need and they deserve. So, dads, stay strong. Your kiddos are counting on you. Have a great week, and God bless.
This concludes today's briefing. Remember, in the family court system, intelligence without execution is liability. Ground is lost quietly during the decision gap between your court hearings. Being unprepared is how great fathers become weekend visitors. I ensure your mistakes don't become your permanent reality. Secure your role today at thedivorcedadvocate.com. Take the weekend visitor risk assessment to identify your exposure, or book your private fatherhood protection system. Stay strong. Your kids are counting on you.